What's up, FA Nation? I'm Justin Fensterman along with Ryan Hallam, and this is Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk, getting you ready for yet another FSGA draft. But this time, Ryan, I got to tell you, it's not going to be a normal draft like you were in yesterday. This time, it's the Football Futures Draft, a very unique concept that involves wagering that continues to get more popularity and acceptance in our great fantasy sports community.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how this one plays out. I heard the idea about it last week, and it sounds awesome. You're not drafting players, you're drafting bets. Not only are you drafting bets, but then you have amount of money that you're putting on each bet. So you go through, and once someone picks the bet, no one else can. So you have that with the snake part coming in like a regular draft. So obviously you want to try to find the one you're most confident in right off the bat, and there's so many to choose from. This could go so many different ways. It should be fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. We're going to go over the rules. This is almost like playing the stock market. Like back in high school, you're given a certain amount of fake money, and all of a sudden you're wagering, you watch the stocks grow, and whoever makes the most money wins. It's kind of how it's going to work here with the Football Futures Draft. Our own Howard Bender and Adam Ronis have a team in this, so of course rooting for them, no bias attached to that. The stream on Zoom will commence at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. On fantasyalarm.com, you can catch it there. 14 teams. Let's tell you about what's going to happen. 12 rounds. Hallam, you just mentioned that once the prop is gone, once the prop is taken, you can't bet on it. However, must say, you can bet on the same prop, but if someone takes the over, then you're stuck taking the under. And that's where things are going to get very interesting. But this is not your normal snake draft where you're just picking the prop and that's it. You've got to place a wager, a minimum wager of $250. Each team, all 14 teams, get a budget of $10,000. A minimum wager of $250, like I said, a maximum wager of $1,750 on the prop. So, Ryan, we'll stop there before we go over the rest of the rules, because right there, when you think about that, you have to think that those prioritized props, they're going to get the higher bet for that, because it's not about just the props you're getting right. You got to win based off dollar amount if the prop is correct.
Yeah, so it's kind of molds a little bit of a snake and an auction draft together, because you have the snake where everybody goes one at a time, and you have the auction where you have the bankroll, but you have to have enough left at the end to make all the wagers. You can't find one and put $9,000 on it and just peter out the rest. You have to kind of work and scatter your bets out so you have enough at the end. So there's so many different layers to this. It's going to be very interesting. I'd love to see two teams go against each other. That would be even better if one takes an over on something and one takes an under. It'd be a lot of trash talking and things going on in this draft. It should be a great group. It should be a lot of fun.
Oh, it'll be great. And it's, again, 14 teams, 12 rounds, and you must have enough in your budget to at least hit the minimum bet for all 12 bets that you make, that these teams are making. Again, 14 teams, they can go in a lot of different directions. Some of these props include yardage totals, over-unders, wins as well from the team side of it. That's going to be interesting to see. What do you think, Ryan? Do you think that in the first round of bets, it's going to be more player props or team win total over-unders?
If it was me, I think I feel the most comfortable with the win totals for the teams, and here's why. While players' injuries really come into play, so say the Saints over and under. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater won a bunch of games, but that doesn't normally happen. Drew Brees missed 4 or 5 games last year. Usually, it's kind of a death sentence for a team like that. You have a little bit more leeway with the team ones than you have with the player ones. So if you pick Drew Brees and his passing yards over, and Drew Brees gets hurt, you're sunk. That one's over. So I feel like there's a little more play with the team ones than the individual player ones. So I'm anticipating those to get the higher numbers and be drafted more in the first round. And I think those are also bets that we're a little more accustomed to making at the moment. A lot of people do player bets, but I think the average fan does over/under bets on teams for the season. So I kind of expect them to go off earlier than some of the player bets, and then there's this end of the year categories as well. So they definitely left a lot of categories for these teams to play with.
Yeah, they have a whole lot to choose from. And one that I was looking at when looking at some of the prop sheet here, we don't know which teams are choosing where, but I can see I have to bite my tongue a little bit, Ryan, because I work with Adam Ronis, like it or not, so much each and every week. And going over wagering with him when it comes to the sport of football, I can already tell the direction he wants to go in with some of these props. So I don't want to give away any secrets here. But here's a prop I was looking at before, and this is one I want to bring up with you because this guy's going to be having a whole lot of attention. You see where he's being drafted, and that guy is Lamar Jackson in some of these other drafts. But when I see a rushing total prop of, let's just say, 919 and a half yards, let me ask you with that one, because you have to think a little bit, the Ravens, are they going to allow him to rush for as many yards, give him as many rush opportunities? They do have a very crowded backfield, including draft pick J.K. Dobbins as well. So you would think logistically that he wouldn't have as many. He had 1,200, over 1,200 rushing yards last year. So what do you think about Lamar Jackson with that particular prop?
To me, I think that is one of the more no-brainers as far as the players are concerned, barring injury, of course. For him, his over-under to be 300 yards less than it was last year, I think is almost a slam dunk in my opinion. I do think he's going to run less, but I don't think it's going to be that much less. For him to drop 300 yards is pretty significant. I still expect him to be in that 1,000 to 1,050 range. So I think this one is an over fairly comfortably. I just think it's in his DNA. He runs, he goes to the line, something breaks down, and he's off. He's their best weapon. Let's be honest. I mean, they'd be silly to hold him back too much because he's the best passer and he's the best runner on the team. So I think Baltimore would be doing themselves a disservice if they hold him back too much. He obviously showed he could pass as well with the 36 touchdowns last year. But I don't see him being held back that much. Barring an injury, I think Lamar Jackson over 919 and a half yards is an absolute slam dunk.
I hope these industry experts are listening. He is Ryan Hallam, the fighting chance man here at fantasyalarm.com. And Ryan was in one of these FSGA drafts. He was in the one yesterday. But it's not only about getting these wagers right, it's about the money total. That's where the auction strategy in here comes. And you got to balance your budget. That's going to be very much on the fly. And then with that, that's where the Zoom concept. And Ryan, I want to ask you this here as someone who was part of the Zoom. I've been a spectator over the last 2 days. I've loved the Zoom. And everybody at fantasyalarm.com who's been involved has done a hell of a job with the Zoom, getting it all together. It's taken a lot of tests. You'll be able to catch yet another Zoom stream at fantasyalarm.com, 4 p.m. Eastern time, the football futures draft. Hallam, I'm so interested in this Zoom because it's going to be a lot more than just watching a queue. This has become budget. This has become making sure no props are available that weren't. So with that, Ryan, I got to tell you, man, the Zoom concept, I think, has been great. On the other side of it, you were part of it. Have you liked the whole Zoom concept, seeing everybody kind of getting inside their own heads and actually physically seeing them talk and a little bit of trash talk? We may not get as much of that today, though. What do you think, Ryan? Because there's a lot more strategy, different factors going into this.
Yeah, it was cool. It's definitely something different I hadn't been a part of before. I was able to do an in-person draft for baseball earlier this year, and then with COVID, we had to move Tout Wars to online, so that you really took the steam out of that one. So this one was kind of at home, but kind of at least kind of around everybody was a little bit better. You could see some people's reactions and things like that, and I tried to play it up a little bit just because I figured it would be a little interesting to watch. And then on the breaks from Sirius, we were able to, free talk among us and, say what we thought was good and what wasn't good and who sniped what. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting concept to see everybody. And I think it's good for everyone out there to try to get that commentary in between breaks from Sirius XM.
Yes, and with Mr. Bender being there, he's going to make sure that there's a lot of trash talking there. So we'll have to see. But again, organization's going to be key here and how much money to place on those prioritized wagers in the first few rounds. Again, 14 teams, 12 rounds. Now, Ryan, you and I were talking a little bit before, and I was asking you about some of your favorite props here, and you have a lot of them, man. They're lucky you're not in this. You seem ready to go here. But one of them that I want to talk to you about, passing touchdowns. Daniel Jones, been watching him go pretty late in the other FSGA drafts. And this is a guy that I like as well, because when it comes to the Giants, we didn't really see the full team healthy last year. They had different injuries at different times. And now when it comes to Daniel Jones, the passing touchdowns, the total 26 and a half, what direction are you going in and why?
I am going all the way over. I just did an article this Monday on Fantasy Alarm. Quarterback preview was all about Daniel Jones. He's a guy that I have all kinds of high hopes for this year, and I know our own James Grande is pretty happy to hear that too. But you were right. First, he had 24 last year. He didn't start the first 2 games of the year. He got injured during the year. Saquon Barkley missed most of a good chunk of the year, and when he came back too fast, and he wasn't the same guy. And Sterling Shepard, there's all kinds of issues. So if he's fully healthy this year, throwing 2.5 more touchdowns to me is cake for this guy. He gets more time with Darius Slayton, who I think is an up-and-comer. Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate are 2 very reliable possession receivers. And Evan Engram, if he could ever stay healthy, is an absolute lethal weapon. And then throwing to Saquon Barkley. I think Daniel Jones got an outside shot at 30 this year. I think he's going to be the one guy being drafted outside of the top 15 quarterbacks that's got a real shot to be starting for a lot of fantasy teams by the end of the year.
Yeah, if I miss on all my targets, I'm absolutely going to go after him. I mean, we're seeing how late he's been going in 14-team leagues here. But how much, this is the most important part, Hallam, it's not just making the wager.
Yeah.
How much of your $10,000 budget are you willing to put on that wager that he's going over that amount?
I'd go $750 on Jones. Triple the minimum, not quite. I'm telling you, the over/under NFL, I think, is the one where you got to pound it. Like I said, Jones goes down, you're sunk. So I'd be a little more conservative if I was in this with the individual player bets than I would with the team bets. But I feel really that was one. If you were going to ask me to pick one, that was the one I was going to go to. So I was pretty happy to see that that's the one you picked out. So I think it's pretty easy in my book.
Just a very intriguing option. And again, with everybody healthy, we hope, fingers crossed, it'll be interesting. More weapons should equal more production. Let's talk about his teammate. You mentioned Saquon Barkley, a prop that you could bet on here in this draft. Rushing and receiving yards collectively. Saquon Barkley, the over-under here, the total 1,749 and a half. What direction are you going, and how some would even say to take him in normal drafts over McCaffrey? Haven't seen it thus far, but I got to ask you, man, what is your outlook?
I am not taking him over Christian McCaffrey, but I sound like a Giants homer here, and I'm definitely not. I'm going over on this one, too. The guy's a beast. He had 1,441 total yards last year and missed, I think, 3 games with the high ankle sprain. Like I said a minute ago, came back too soon. You could tell he wasn't the same guy when he came back. Giants tried to improve their offensive line again a little bit more. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. He's a beast with the ball. He had over 2,000 total yards in his rookie year. This seems like an easy over to me as well. Maybe I'm liking the Giants a little too much. I think their defense might hold them back, but I love their offense. I think Jones and Barkley are both in for big years, so 1749.5, that's an over for me as well.
Let's stick with this same prop category, rushing and receiving yards total. Let's look at Miles Sanders. Very intriguing option, because this is a guy that when we were drafting a couple of months back, he was more of a second-round pick. Now we've seen him move up to that first round. And last year we saw what happened. Jordan Howard was essentially the guy to start, and then he gets hurt. Miles Sanders just takes over. We know what he's capable of. I'm putting that total. I'm not putting that total. You could say Westgate. You could say FanDuel, where these props are taken from. 1,424 and a half. What are you taking, the over-under? And you're going to have to give me a dollar amount.
Okay. I like him more as a very early second-round pick as far as regular fantasy drafts are concerned, but he had 1,327 total yards last year as a rookie, and like you said, Jordan Howard was the man, at least in the beginning of the season. So to me, this is an easy over. You're only looking for another 100 yards. Boston Scott is there. He did very well when Sanders was a little dinged up last year. There's no doubt about that. Doug Peterson likes to use the committee approach, but man, 100 more yards, I think that's easy. I think Sanders is going to go over that. I'll go with not quite as confident as the Daniel Jones touchdown. I'll go 600 on Miles. We should start writing this down. Let's see how I do. We'll watch this afterwards.
You're going to be the imaginary 15th team in this, but this is what we do here. This is what Hallam and Fensty do. We're trying to make the magic happen. Get your appetites wet for this draft. Again, fantasyalarm.com. You can catch the Zoom stream and you get to see physically inside the minds of these analysts here. So I would ask you this here because you've been cheaping out on me, Hallam, here.
Okay.
So you have a ton of props that you had sent me that you liked. So if you were going to place over $1,000 on any of the props, which one would it be?
I'm going to go 2 on the NFL win totals. And the easiest one to me, and I think I'd go 1750 on this one, is the Chargers over under 8 wins. I think that's an easy under. Their quarterback is either Tyrod Taylor or rookie Justin Herbert, who went early, I think 5th overall. But he wasn't exactly the highest touted guy in the world. I think there's a lot of question marks there. They've got Keenan Allen and not a lot else wide receiver, people like Mike Williams, but I kind of feel like he's a boomer bust kind of guy. Austin Eckler is a nice, all-purpose running back. Their defense is pretty good, but I don't see any way the Chargers score enough points to win 8 games. They're in the division with the Chiefs, who I think that's 2 easy losses. I think Denver's improving. They should beat the Chargers. Even the Raiders have improved. I think the Chargers under 8, I'd max bet that. I don't see any way that they win 8 games.
Wow. So there you go. So that, again, under, you could go over 1,000 there with that. Hallam, I mean, I hope everybody's listening to you, man, because this is very good information that we're given right now. Let's talk about another player, and this is what very intriguing guy that I'm starting to see his ADP go up a little bit. Was shocked it was as low as it was. Now I'm seeing Odell Beckham Jr. start to rise a little bit, wondering if by the time August hits, he'll hit second-round value redraft leagues. But let's talk for this sake and for this draft here, the football futures draft taking place today. The receiving touchdowns, 6.5. This could be a resurgent year for him, apparently playing hurt most, if not all, of the season. If you were placing that wager, you going over or under on that 6.5?
I don't know if John and Pemba put you up to this one because he and me and a bunch of other FA Nation got a big argument about Odell Beckham over Twitter last night. He is probably my least favorite player in the NFL. And I feel like he's a little overrated for fantasy. It just always seems like we're making excuses for him. It's always somebody else's fault. First it was Eli's fault, then it was Mayfield's fault, then it was Freddie Kitchens' fault, and then the kicking net's fault, and then it's always somebody else's fault for this guy. It's never him.
But dude, he can catch touchdowns with one hand, man.
He had 3 great years to start the season. He got hurt the 4th year. His last year in New York, he got a quad injury when they were like 4-10 and just took the rest of the year off. The minute he doesn't get what he wants, he starts whining and stops trying, in my opinion. But 6.5 is also pretty low. I probably have to go slightly over. That might be a 250 bet for me. I didn't look to see what he had last year. I think it was around 6 touchdowns. Cleveland, I expect to be a little bit better this year, but they've got a lot of weapons. I mean, between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, both can catch passes, and obviously Hunt is great at it. Jarvis Landry's a target beast, and they brought in Austin Hooper. So it's not a slam dunk. 6.5 does seem a hair low. I definitely wouldn't touch it if I was in this draft. If I had to make a choice, I'd go over, but at the minimum 250 for sure.
He had 4 last year.
4.
It's close, man. I mean, I might have
close
to take the over too, but yes, you're absolutely right, because I don't want to put a lot of trust in the Browns. So what do? You put the table minimum. That's what you do. But if you're a little bit more confident in him and you think he could get 3 more touchdowns than he did last year, then yeah, you're going to put an even bigger wager. Again, a $10,000 budget that these participants have. 14 teams, 12 rounds, and you must have enough money to be able to make a wager for all 12 rounds. Let's talk about another prop and another player that you highlighted here. And let's talk about a returning Rob Gronkowski, short-lived WWE wrestler, now former 24/7 champion, mind you. So this guy wins titles more than just football. But the prop here for him on receiving yards, now with his buddy Tom Brady in Tampa, 599.5 yards. What are your expectations for Gronk this year?
Of course, it's going to come down to health with him. He dealt with a lot of back injuries in his career. I'm going to say the year off had to do him well. I think
he looks smaller, though. That's the problem.
That's fine. That's fine. He's not, he's more of a quick. He was always too fast for linebackers to guard. He was too big for safeties, too, so maybe he lost some of that. But 599 yards, that's not a lot. That's not even 50 yards a game is 800. So we're talking 40 yards a game, assuming he is healthy. I think that's a no-brainer. I know they've got the 2 great receivers. they don't have a great slot receiver, Scotty Miller. I mean, no big deal there. I don't know if
What
either
about
running
O.J.
back.
Howard? You would think they would have gotten rid of him. They didn't.
True, but I mean, 40 yards a game. I think it's easy. I think Gronk can easily have 40 yards a game. I think he's gonna have a couple 100-yard games. I can see him going 700 to 750 yards. 599.5 to me is too low. Give me $500 on that.
I like that too.
That's
actually,
Kelly. I'm sorry, that was George Kelly. Gronk spike.
It's Gronk spike right there, and $500 in your imaginary pocket, Ryan Hallam. I like that too. Actually, it's not a high bar for him. I mean, some of the other props that you've highlighted are bigger, like with Mike Evans, over under 1,200 yards and a half there.
That's an under. That's too much.
That is. I mean, if I'm seeing those, I feel like you got to go safety here, and that's the thing. You can't reach too much. I'm thinking that Gronk prop is going to go pretty early. If I had to predict, I would say that goes in probably the 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, that seems way too low. That seems way too low to me. When you break it down on a per game basis, it's not asking them to do a lot.
No, really not. Now let's talk about a rookie, a darling, best player available, taken by the Dallas Cowboys. The words of Jim Bowden. How about my Cowboys, as he likes to say. It's the last time I'm saying that this stream. But CeeDee Lamb here, 4.5 receiving touchdowns, entering a team with guys like Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, Zeke there as well. Dak, I mean, what do you think about this prop here? 4.5 touchdowns doesn't seem like a lot, but a decent amount of mouths to feed in Dallas.
Yeah, I'm going the over on that one. Not this is probably going to be another low-level confidence, 350 maybe. It's one a month, basically. It gives you 4, so he needs one other. And you got to figure Dak's going to throw 30 or close to it. That's a pretty good bet. I mean, Zeke doesn't catch that many passes. He catches some, but he's not like a Christian McCaffrey kind of back. So even if Cooper gets 10 and Gallup get 10, which I don't know that either one of those guys will get to there, there's a lot still to go around. 4.5 to me isn't a lot. You get that Giants secondary, although they made some improvements in the offseason. I think he can do it. 4.5. I don't know that he's going to get a ton of catches, but I think also he's not going to be facing the team's best corners with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup there. He's going to be facing some slot corner. So I think he's going to see some mismatches. And then if one of those guys goes down like Amari Cooper did last year, he's going to get even more looks there. So 4.5 to me seemed a little low even for a rookie. So I'm going to take the over on that one.
Right. Now let's go to another rookie here, Jalen Rieger. I mean, not the biggest receiver when it comes to size. However, when it comes to Philly, one thing that still remains to be seen is what the deal is with another receiver that they have in Alshon Jeffrey. We don't know when we're going to see him again. Somebody has to be scoring the touchdowns there. We'll put him, just like with CeeDee Lamb, at the 4.5 line for the touchdowns. You're going over under there.
I'm going over there as well, and a lot of it is because of the uncertainty with Alshon Jeffrey. Jeffrey commands some targets when he's healthy, but he's A, not, B, getting older. And the Eagles, they brought in Marquise Goodwin. He's nice, but he's not, no thrill. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside from last year he could pop this year, but didn't really show us much of last year. You got Miles Sanders, and you got to contend more with the 2 tight ends than anything else. So again, just like CeeDee Lamb, it's a touchdown a month, and I think Rieger's going to see the field a lot as a rookie, especially if Jeffrey misses a lot of time. So this one, probably the minimum 250 there, but I'll go with the Jalen Rieger over 4.5.
Speaking of receiving touchdowns, let's talk about a Chicago Bears wide receiver that I love just so much, and I just want to get him on all of my teams, and that's because I think, and he's already proven it, he's quarterback proof, and that is Allen Robinson. 7 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns last year. Now we put the line at 7.5, and I wonder if I'm still wondering why this guy is going as low as he is in redraft leagues, even in the FSGA drafts that we've seen already. But for this particular draft, the football futures draft, 7.5. And it's almost like you have to think that's a lock for him to go over. Who else do they really have there? They're going to be Anthony Miller. Great. Outside of that, I mean, come on, man. This has to be close to a lock over here.
It's definitely an over. I'm going at least 500. And this is the bet that I got into with Odell Beckham over Twitter last night. Is I have now Allen Robinson against Odell Beckham next year for a pie in the face or a jersey. I can't remember exactly what it turned out to be.
Well, that's a pretty big differential right there.
I think it's Jersey now.
One's going to cost you about $1.50 in the grocery store. The other one's going to cost you probably up to like $60, $80.
I'm not going to lose anyway, so it's okay.
Ooh, I like it. I mean,
yeah,
you have to think it's a surefire over here.
I think it's a surefire over for all the reasons you just said. The only problem is, who we don't know who the quarterback is, but he dealt with Trubisky's garbage last year, and Nick Foles is okay. He's not that bad. I mean, at least he's not bad. We know that, so he's not going to tank the offense. And like I said, outside of Miller, there's just not a lot there. Tyreek Cohen coming out of the backfield. My guy David Montgomery, but they're not going to take touchdowns away from Allen Robinson. I figure he's going to be close to double digits this year. I think that one's an easy over. Give me 500 on that one.
How popular do you think some of the other bets are going to be regarding the Super Bowl line and NFC and AFC championships? I mean, it's a little bit tougher going that direction, but maybe by the time we hit rounds 8 through 12, then all of a sudden those bets start going off the board here. I mean, if you were in this, Ryan, would you be targeting those types of bets, or would you stick with the win totals and the player props that we've been discussing for most of the stream?
Yeah, I would stick with the win-loss and the player prop. Those you're really counting on a lot now. And not only are you counting on your team stay healthy, and now your team has to get through the playoffs. Look at last year. The Ravens came in the hottest team in football and got bounced before the AFC championship. So you're looking for health of a lot of players, some things to break right. You're picking a team to win the Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl, or even now there's a Super Bowl line. You don't even know who's in it yet. So right. Those to me are really difficult. I'd really probably hold off on those. There's some that I would target if it came to that, but that's just putting so many variables in play for you to take your bet and win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why when I'm looking at the props here, those are props that I would personally stay away from, but I'm not in this, and we'll have to see what the analysts and experts do with those type of props. So again, a lot more to take into consideration there.
The one thing I'll say before, if it's not be good for a last round bit to hit like a long shot, like the Bills are 30-1 to win the Super Bowl. Those are pretty long odds for a team that I think has a shot. Now you bet 250 down on that, and you win 31 odds. That's a pretty good, pretty good return. So maybe a last round pick, something like that. Something that you're reaching for and hoping for a big win. That's where I'd put something like that.
Right. Now, then that's a good point, by the way. More money, because that's what the name of the game is. It's not just about getting the bet right. It's about who has the most money. It's literally like playing a stock market in your business class in high school, like I'm saying, because that's the thing that I remember doing. That's the closest thing to this. Ryan, let me ask you about another prop that you were identifying before, and that's Joe Mixon. I mean, with right now uncertainty, talk about uncertainty, potential holdouts, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook. With Joe Mixon, would you even go after props involving him at this point? Because, mostly, we don't know what to expect. We haven't heard too much about whether or not he'll get his new deal. The pressure is on with the new CBA that he does show up, but at the same time, it seems a little bit risky with going after a Mixon or a Cook prop.
Yeah, and not only that, but I don't have them in front of me, but Mixon's was real high. It was like 1,150 or almost 1,200 rushing yards. It was almost his career high. He was real hot at the end of the year, but if you remember the beginning of the year, he was a disaster. He didn't score a touchdown until week 10. I think it was a long time. So people are remembering the end of the year. They're forgetting the beginning of the year. And we'll see what Joe Burrow is. We all like to think he's going to come in and be good. He could bust, and then you have no quarterback. And what's happening then? Then the defense just pins their ears back on Mixon, and he can't do anything. So I like him. I think he's going to have a decent season, but his numbers were way too high for me to even take a sniff at. If anything, I would take the under on him.
Yeah, is the risk worth the reward? That's what these analysts are going to have to decide. Again, Ryan, a lot of factors to consider. Because, again, it's not, for those that are just tuning in, this is not your normal snake draft where you put a bunch of your active targets in the queue and that's it. You pick them, you watch, you put more in the queue. No, this is budgeting. This is strategy. This is dollar amount. This is making sure that if you are pretty much thinking a lock on a bet, you got to take it in the first round. Because someone else could be competing against you and could go, you go the over, they go the under. So that's something that's going to be very interesting. And 4 p.m. Eastern time, fantasyalarm.com, the FSGA Football Futures Draft. Our own Howard Bender and Adam Rodas will be tag teaming in that one. They have a team, 14 teams, 12 rounds, $10 $1,000 bankroll. Minimum wager per bet. 12 bets that they have to make, and they must have enough money to hit the table minimum with each wager. $250. Maximum $1,750. Ryan, it's going to be the most intriguing draft we see, something very different. But in this new world where wagering is accepted, that's where we as an industry have to evolve with the times. And I'm surely very excited to see what transpires in this draft.
It's a perfect mix of fantasy sports and gaming that the FSGA embodies. I mean, it's the fantasy sports and the betting. This was a fantastic idea. Whoever idea this was deserves a raise. I think this is going to be awesome. I think this is something that's going to be repeated by others in the industry. I think this is going to be a fascinating first draft. I look forward to looking at it. Good luck to our guys. And I'm certainly going to be following along. And this was fun just to throw out a bunch with you and try to put some dollar amounts down and see how it plays out.
I have to ask you one more question. You just mentioned that raise, the person that came up with this idea, probably from the FSGA. What raise would you give him? Would you give him the minimum wager of $250 or $1,750?
$1,750 market. Give that person a raise, whoever it was.
Yes. For Ryan Hallam, I am Justin Fensterman. Tune back in fantasyalarm.com, 4 p.m. Eastern time. That is when the draft will commence. Brad Evans is hosting it. Get ready to win. Get ready to wager. It's fantasy football season, and we are ready to dominate. There's no other option.